Hey, fellas, this is going to be part one of a two-parter video giving a little bit of tips and pointers and stuff on the Hindi, which, as all of you very well know by now, is my favorite ship in the game. So I figured in this first part we'll just go over the basics, how I have it built, captain setup and everything, and also go over a couple options, because I do have the legendary, I run some special mods, and then I have luchins as well. So in case you don't have any of those, some options of what I would pick and things that I would also consider valuable and even have had on my previous build. So we'll start with the equipment. Spotting aircraft. This is one of the special modifications that I bought for Cole. It increases the action time by 30%. And I don't remember exactly the amount of time that gives you, but it's definitely a significant boost, and it is noticeable. Now, one of the things with that is I don't know why it took me so long to even consider buying this, because before I did, I used the spotting aircraft on the Hindi a tremendous amount. And part of the caveat there is that I also became pretty adept at shooting with the spotting aircraft. It does take some practice, as it does with, really any other ship where you're using the spotting. But certainly it gives you advantages when shooting things in smoke, shooting things over islands, stuff like that. So that goes in slot 1. If you don't have it or don't want to go with it, just main armaments, mod 1. Even with this, the German ships, at least the battleships and the cruisers, seem to be incredibly prone to losing their torpedo tubes. So this is useful either way. Second one, damage control. You very rarely ever lose your engine or your steering gears. So damage is what I would go with. It's more functional. Plus, in combination with the legendary upgrade, which you can see, fire extinguishing -40, flooding -70. I don't add the final one, but you get your fires, they only burn for a maximum of 10 seconds, which is absolutely hilarious. And there are times, so when I do, which one is it? It's, yeah, here. So if you were to run Damage Control Mod 2, fires only have a duration of 8 seconds, and I've had people who swear I use a repair party when I don't. I actually just let the fire burn out. Third slot, aiming. Now this one is pretty much a no-brainer. None of the other things are anywhere near as functional. The next closest one would be main battery mod 2, but even that, your turrets traverse at a very reasonable amount of time, and you can be in full maneuvering mode, and your guns can still stay on target. So even then, this isn't really a huge deal. This synergizes pretty well with luchins and AR, and getting your reload down, and considering the amount of times where, granted, for the most part you're going to be slinging HE at range, when you do have the opportunity to shoot AP, it is absolutely devastating in this ship. So getting as many of those shots on target is very functional, and then obviously reducing the dispersion when you are firing at things at range is useful as well. Fourth slot. So steering gears mod 1. Any one of these is actually functional in the Hindenburg. Propulsion probably the least so, because your acceleration isn't fast enough. That, I mean, it sounds like a contradiction in terms, but I don't use my propulsion to juke as much as, say, in the Henri or any other, the British cruisers. The Des Moines is legendary. It feels like the steering gears pays off more when you're doing your active maneuvering and you're able to angle once you know shells are incoming. So this is what I go with for 4. And this one, the legendary, as I already highlighted, it reduces all of the repairing elements so quickly that it really does become funny. It's, in my opinion, probably the second or third most valuable legendary module that you can get. Yami's a pretty good one, but like I said, it synergizes really well with some of the other repairs and gets your burning time and the rare event that you're flooding down substantially. What that does cost you, though, is concealment. And what you can see here is a 14-kilometer detection range, which is not good. But considering that you're not in this ship relying too heavily on concealment, you're not trying to get into places in a sneaky way, so it really doesn't matter to me. But all that being said, I would say that either concealment or steering gears mod 2, if you don't have the legendary, both are very functional in this ship, either way you want to go. And last but not least, I do go with main battery mod 3 to reduce the reload time by 12%. I mentioned it before, but again, in combination with Adrenaline Rush and Luchins here, you can get your reload down into the sub 8-second range, which you will see in the example, and you will also see in the video clip that I have how that basically facilitates a kill for me. It's not quite Des Moines levels of reload, but these guns are really powerful, and if you can be reloading every, I think it's 7.7 seconds or something like that, the amount of fires you can light, the amount of AP damage you can do is absolutely devastating. So I do go with Hydro. It's 6k Hydro, it's German Hydro, it's pretty long duration, it's stronger and much more functional than defensive AA, although an argument could be made considering the proliferation of CVs that we've all been seeing. However, even defensive AA on the German ships, it's just not potent enough. Like, even if you are against the tier 10 CV, I would still prefer to have Hydro over DFAA and try to rely on just dodging CV attacks, although they can be pretty devastating. And then the other one, again, exact same principle. So I use the spotting aircraft, of course, because I have the spotting aircraft mod, but even if you had a fighter, it doesn't do enough or really much of anything. So no point in going with that on that one. Flags. You are a fire starter, so providing you have enough, I do run both the fire flags. Also, so this was the one I did forget to mention, if you do run India Yankee to bring down the fire extinguishing time by another 20%, that gets you down into the range I was talking about, the sub 10 second or 8 second if you run the other damage control mod too. The other one, so you don't really need, I can't remember ever detonating in a Hindenburg thanks to the armor and stuff, so I don't very often throw that on there. I do run Sierra Mike though, and obviously India Delta to get you a little bit more of your heal, but this again helps with the active maneuvering. But really there isn't much in the way of anything wrong with anything you would choose up here. So let's move on to the captain. So again, I mentioned I have Luchins. He is the special captain. He has a handful of talents. Let's see, that one doesn't matter. Secondary battery hits doesn't matter for this, but it is very nice when you're in when you slap him in one of your German battleships. Here's the one that you use very often. So when you get 140 main battery hits, it reduces the main battery reload time. 140 sounds like a lot, but part of the strategy, at least early game and going to the middle of the game, is to set up in a position where you are trying to farm things at range, keeping your guns hot, shooting at anything. Like, I mean, battleships are obviously optimal, but you have a very good shell velocity, and even at max range with the spotter plane, it's not that difficult to land hits on cruisers and even destroyers. Not at max range, but destroyers getting out to 14 kilometers still can be hit with a fair amount of frequency. And then 3 spotting ribbons. This is again very useful, but in a ship where you're not pushing, you're not going to be in the front lines very much. It's incredibly rare that you're going to ever proc this special ability, but if you do, it's definitely very useful. Another little tip that I do, and this is just me, a lot of people like having the tracers on when they have their special captain. I don't, because I kind of like to not give it away to the enemy right away that I am running a special captain. Not that that dramatically changes how an enemy approaches you, but every little advantage you can get, you try to take. I do keep the fireworks on though, because basically, if an enemy ship sees you having fireworks going off, it's already too late. So we'll get to the skills. 1-point skills, priority target, and this one should be a no-brainer for basically every ship. Now, the exceptions are a handful of battleships that I don't run priority target on, where I kind of, as useful as it is for determining torpedoes being sent at you, I kind of assume that that's happening at all times. So but other than that, every destroyer, every cruiser, and as I just mentioned, if you didn't know, with priority target, it tells you when enemy ships and how many enemy ships are targeting you, but only with their main battery guns. And the key part of that is that if you have a suspicion that a destroyer is targeting you, and you see this switch from 1 to 0 and then back to 1, there's a very fair probability that he just shot torpedoes at you. So it's good to keep an eye on this, and if you ever see it flip down and then flip back up in pretty short in a short time span, it's a good idea to pull a pretty dramatic maneuver from that point. There's a chance, it's not always true, that torpedoes will be coming, but that's a good little tip if anyone wasn't aware. That being said, and a real quick aside, there have been times when I've kind of trolled enemy ships and I realized that they have priority target, and this is mostly in a DD, not in a Hindi, but I will switch back and forth incessantly just to make it really confusing for them and harder for them to know when exactly I'm throwing torps. Flip side of that is, well, it's not even the flip side, it's further, and again with destroyers, if you switch to your torpedoes to fire at a target, very often I will stay on the torpedoes and keep that ship targeted. And that way, if they do have priority target, it doesn't switch back and forth as quickly, and it might give you a little bit of an advantage there. Okay, so the other skill is preventative maintenance. This is one where you get an extra boost with Luchans. So that has a lot to do with why I go with it. The other thing is, while you don't tend to lose your turrets, steering, or engine, it's the torpedo tubes that I mentioned that get knocked out like crazy, and this helps mitigate that to a certain degree anyway. So usually in the order of things, I'll go priority target, and then adrenaline rush, superintendent, and concealment. So just, the order of things, and then any of the other ones after that. But expert marksman, again, you get extra traverse speed. It's a perk of Gunther Luchans, and this is another reason why I am less. It's less necessary to worry about the module to increase your turret traverse, because you already get a little bit of a boost with this. AR, for obvious reasons, as your HP decreases, your reload increases, and you can get it down to that insane 7-second level in the Hindenburg. So basics of survivability. This is one of the skills that synergizes again really well with the legendary module and helps get those floodings and in particular fire times down really, really low. almost to the point where, even though that's kind of already a rule, you can even let 2 fires just burn out. Like, you don't need to use your repair party more. Well, you can use your repair party less often than you do in other ships, in most other ships. So Superintendent, as a general rule, not only, like, so with things like the Hydro and the spotter plane, I don't know that I've had very many matches where I even get to use all 5 of my spotter plane, or even all my Hydros, but any ship that has a heal, if it's got a heal, Superintendent is a must in my book, because that can come in incredibly useful, especially late game. Demolition Expert, because you're a flamethrower, so that's kind of self-explanatory there. And then finally Concealment. Yeah, 14 kilometers isn't great, but really compared to anything else, I think Fire Prevention is the one that can get your fires down to 8 seconds. But really nothing else is that useful. Radiolocation can have some function, but again, 8 out of 10 games in the Hindi, you're not really at a huge, there's not a huge threat from a ship being the closest ship to you. You should be able to keep that in mind. So that's basically the breakdown there. There are obviously other options that you can go with, but I think generally speaking, especially when considering Luchins, this is probably the optimal build, and it's definitely the optimal build for how I decide to play. So let's get to business and start that replay. Alrighty, so here we go with this. I do usually at the beginning, I'll take a look at the ships I'm facing, although in a Hindenburg it is kind of nice that you don't have to worry too much about anything in particular. And in this game, you will see quite a few examples of different things that I've talked about. You've all heard me say before. One of the half-joking ones is if you don't take at least one Citadel in a game, you're not doing it right. You will see an example of that, but most importantly and most seriously, that it's a very fine line, and it's something that that can result in you getting killed. Well, I have to make a comment because I am facing an FDR. Very, very thankfully, he does not choose to go after me until later in the game, and that's actually a substantial mistake on his part, as we'll show. But back to what I was saying, that it's a very fine line to walk, and the result, it is risky, but you have to be close enough that you encourage enemy ships to shoot at you. We've all seen videos, and I've had games. I was thinking about posting one where I pretty much just stay at range the entire time and show the impact and the power you can have in the Hindenburg, and you definitely can. You can do a metric buttload of damage at range. But as far as having a more substantial impact on the outcome, win or lose, you have to put yourself in a position where the enemy wants to shoot at you. And the fine line is you don't want to be so close that they can hit you, that they can kill you. But you don't want to be so far away that they don't even bother. Because really, in this ship and in a handful of others, its tank ability, your ability to act and maneuver, facilitates this ideal ship for this, where every single time an enemy is looking at you or taking a shot at you, that's one of your teammates that they're not taking a shot at. And as we've all seen in recent months, very often that's a better bet. You're better safe than sorry, because you can't rely on your teammates. If an enemy takes a shot at one of my teammates, I don't know that he's smart enough to not be showing broadside and won't get eliminated. So it's better that they be looking at you and not someone else. So here, this is something that you see, or that I do a ton when they get hurt. As early as possible, I will use my spotter plane to try and do exactly what happened with that North Carolina. Now, I'm not taking full credit, but me starting shooting at him, and look what happened. He immediately stopped his push, and he turned away. Now, normally I won't take a whole lot of credit for stuff like that being on me. I do also have a North Carolina and a Drake and stuff with me here. But as you'll see, throughout the course of this game, keep your eye on that North Carolina, as I actually do myself. And here comes the first salvo. I don't know what it is about me, but he definitely tries real hard to punish me, which is good, because in particular at ranges like this, he has a really difficult time punishing me. So I lose sight of everything that's in here. It looks like a couple minnows came in to get the cap and did end up taking it using their smoke. But here we go with the other benefit of the spotter plane, is your ability to more accurately shoot into smoke. So obviously shooting at a minnow, you switch to AP. Well, okay, that didn't look good yet. It looks like he's kind of reversing. So I adjust my aim. And there's a couple citadels. And unfortunately, he gets completely cleaned out before my second salvo can get there. So notice here. Now, you could very easily argue that my positioning right now is a little too far back, and I would actually concur. Now, this was also before I kind of knew the real composition of the enemy. I thought maybe there was a DD in the cap along with the minnows, so I didn't want to push up. Now that I know that it's just a minnow, a long-range North Carolina, and a Vlad, what I'm going to try to do here is get at the front of this whole group of ships that I have to my right. That's a tremendous amount of support coming through the A flank, and I feel like it's more than adequate to take it. So I push up. I want to get to the lead. I want to try and here you see I'm pinging on my map that right now, okay, here we go, guys. Like, let's push up. We're clear. Most of the enemies in the northeast. We've only got 3 here, and it looks like even the Vlad might be AFK. So I want to get to the front. I want to let myself be seen. As soon as the North Carolina comes into range, I open up, because I want him shooting at me and not someone else. Now, it's hard for me to describe as I'm doing it, but you can see right here. I feinted that I was going to be giving him total broadside. And as the second I saw him shoot at me, so I again, focusing on him and watching his guns, watching priority target, I knew it was him who was shooting at me. The second he did, I go full reverse and crank the rudder to the opposite side and point my nose at him. And as you can see, he didn't land a single hit. Keep firing at the minnow, and that one, minnows are kind of tough to hit at range, but the idea there is kind of an area denial thing, where the more I'm shooting at him, the more other people are shooting at him. I want to push him north. I want to get him away. That seems to be accomplished. So here we go again with my little feud with this North Carolina. And you can see my priority target. I've only got one targeting me, and I know it's him. So once again, feint the broadside. And as soon as I see him shoot, I hit the brakes, and I come to almost a complete stop, and he overshoots me. Now the other thing, like, even though you do want to keep people shooting at you, and this guy will, it does happen at times here. Oh, well, so real quick, I'll get back to it in a second. Right here, because what I did twice in a row to him was hit the full reverse and turn in, and the island ended up getting in the way. But even if he was going to take a shot at me, the third time I just stayed flat broadside and flat full ahead. Because even though that's not what you want to do on paper, the chances are, considering what I just did twice in a row to throw off his shots, he wouldn't be expecting me to just continue showing broadside and moving straight ahead. So I didn't get it. That wasn't a good opportunity. I didn't get a chance to showcase that because I did get behind cover. Here, obviously, minnow getting into the cap, switch to AP. And you can see how devastating this is. So we're at a crucial point in the game here. If you look at the map and look at what my team's doing, that force that I was with continued to move north, which is good. Continued to move north and create like crossfires on the enemy and all that type of stuff. But I continue in the direction I am because look at this force coming from the south side of sea. And what I want to do, first of all, I want to kill this minnow so he doesn't get the cap. But I want to be the one that these guys are looking at, and right there, I take my infamous at least one Citadel a game, and I didn't see it coming, but it was the Stalingrad, and triple Citadel on the minnow, and he goes down, hooray. But here's the thing, you cannot be afraid to get hit. Be afraid of dying for sure, but a lot of people are way too scared and even start to kind of panic a little bit when even just that happens. Yeah, I took one Citadel. Yeah, I had the Stalingrad, the Brindisi, and maybe the Izumo looking at me, but you don't worry and freak out. And even though what I immediately started doing here was kiting, so it might look like I'm running away, and in fact I am running away, but where is it? I need to create a little bit of distance, but then I'll hit my brakes. What I'm really doing here, there is nothing in the north that can hit me from the broadside. So by turning in this direction, the Stalingrad, the Brindisi, and the Izumo, the main threats to me right now, don't have much to shoot at. They don't have a good angle. Now, you'll see some of my maneuvering here, right there. I want the Stalingrad to shoot at me. I want the Drake to try to be able to handle the DD and the other ships in the north. I want the Stalingrad to shoot at me. So right there, I hit my full brakes, I showed him a little bit of side to try and tempt him into hitting me, and he does hit me good. But I had a heal coming. So I really get to heal back a lot of what he just hit me for. And further, I think I'm just getting out of range from him. See, does he get another one? Yeah, a little bit. But the important part is, all that damage, all that time he just spent hitting me and hitting me good, was not spent hitting anyone else on my team. And there we go, I procced one of the talents. You'll see the reload get to absolutely insane levels here. Now, at this point, Brindisi and Stalingrad are not threats. Now, what I'm left with really is this Izumo and the Atago. What you'll see me do here is actually pretty, I consider it pretty interesting and something that could be somewhat controversial. Now, obviously, I cannot see the Atago. His detection is way better than mine. So he's not a focus. Right now, the amount of HP that Izumo has, he's the biggest threat to my team. I throw one salvo at the Atago, just to discourage him from keeping up the fire on me. To maybe encourage him to go dark again and try to get a little closer before he opens up. Meanwhile, I keep trying to burn this Izumo. At this point, I'm out of range of the Stalingrad. He did take a couple shots, and I did maneuver adequately. Now all my gunpowder is going to be focused on this Izumo. And his guns are facing away. I can show him some broadside. I did encourage that Atago to go dark and not continue shooting at me. Spectacular. But it flips back up to 1 now. I also see the FDR kind of coming my way, which is a little worrisome. So I presume that that's the Atago, and sure enough, here come his shells. I use this island, which I paying lots of attention to the minimap. I knew the island was going to give me momentary cover there. And the Atago starts shooting. I do have a fire going on the Izumo. I get the Wither and I got the Confederate. Now here's the controversial part.
The ship is on fire!
I completely ignore this Atago. Now, I say that, and that's actually not true. I don't completely ignore him. I actually just ignore this Atago with my guns. But everything else that I'm doing, every other maneuver, I'm doing to mitigate the damage that Atago can do to me as much as possible. But I'm ignoring him with my guns. Primarily because this Izumo is now at a point where I feel like I can get him. So I want to do my best to try and burn him to the ground and prevent him from continuing to have the cross shots on my team that he does have. He uses his back turret to take a shot, and, well, I actually got a little lucky there. But, hey, and now he's swinging all his turrets to me. So I crank outwards. Thankfully, good for me, that the maneuvering, turning out and away and slowing down, not only lets me angle against the Izumo, but angle against the Atago as well. And here's the part of this match where I kind of thought, great, I might be in trouble. Because Mr. FDR decided to pay attention. I don't know exactly how I managed to get away with as little damage as I did, but at this point, I now am being forced to maneuver to counter the FDR. Whew, and there come the last Izumo salvo, and I get away with it. It's at this point, because I have no choice, I'm having to maneuver against him, so I can't continue to ignore this Atago. So I do start to turn my guns to him. At this point, though, no, still gonna pay attention to Mr. Izumo. He's close enough. I'm burning him. I can get him. I know I can. Come on. And the Atago is close enough that he can't go undetected. So now, switch to the AP, but let him feel safe. Still not aiming at him. There we go. Once my AP is reloaded, then I let him know I'm looking at him. And this is where AR and Lucians come real handy, and you can see the true power of the reload and these guns. Full health Atago, 5 kilometers from me. I have 3k HP. He's full. Yes, he gets me, but I get him.
Enemy cruisers
and
sunk.
That, more or less, seals this victory. I unfortunately didn't get the Izumo, and I really, really, really wanted to before I went down. But there goes the Vlad, and with that, we should have no problem even being down on caps at this point. They have a Yagumo and an Izumo, and that's it. I walk away. I do a little bit of a humble brag there with 3 kills, 15 fires, 10 citadels, and 276k damage. More importantly than any of those numbers, although they're great numbers and they were very impactful, is if you look, tanking 2.1 million, which means that's how much the enemy had to worry about me. And I was able to do what I was able to do despite them throwing that much lead in my direction. So in my next video, what I'm going to try and do is highlight in a little bit more detail some of my formula to doing the kiting and mitigating damage. Admittedly, in this game. Um, there were a couple of salvos, especially the Azumo shooting at me, where luck was involved. No question. It wasn't me knowing he was shooting at me and when and maneuvering just in time. Nah, I got lucky with RNG. And so what I want to do in my next video with the Hindenburg is not only highlight the strength it can have doing the opposite, although even at the very end you got to see how at close range the ship can be devastating, but how formulate a little bit better how I do the active maneuvering thing. And there are, there's obviously a fair amount of luck involved, but there is definitely something I've been trying actually for years to try and formulate. And so I will go into that in a little more detail next time. Thank you, guys.